Sorry, tell me what that is.
That's the Derby Arms there, the Derby Arms, Bailey's Lane, and the fields, and that's where they built the first houses in Halewood. That was the start. And then they never stopped. They're still building, never stopped.
Let's see. Postcard depicting Burley Lane, Halewood.
Well, I'm Dot Birch. I live in Halewood and lived in Halewood since I was born.
I'm Henry Birch. I come from the heart of Liverpool. We've been married how long?
65 years. This was from my bedroom window. That's from my bedroom. This here is High Road. The top there's High Road. And this was the old Leathers Lane.
Amazing.
Which is now Fir Avenue.
And how come you've got these like this then? How come they're big pictures like that?
I think my dad got them done. I took the photographs, but my dad got them all enlarged. In fact, it's got his name on the back, Harry Allen. And then mine. What I can remember is going on the farm with my dad when he was milking the cows. They didn't have any machinery. It was a stool, a bucket, and by hand. And all I can remember is sitting there milking the cows and the tail swishing and everything going all over the place, and my dad smelling rather iffy. And he used to tell me tales about with all the bales of hay that they used to have to go in, him and a few of the other men, to kill all the rats. So they'd have to tie their trousers down so the rats wouldn't go up the trouser leg. We used to have 2 horses in this field, and there was a big pond here. My brother used to go fishing there. Seemingly there was a bomb drop there. I'm not quite sure, but that's the tale I got told. It was a bomb. I can't remember much more about my dad. He worked on Grace's farm as well as Rollinson's farm. He worked on Grace's farm when he was about 8, I think it was. He used to walk from Woolton all the way to work on the farm with his brother, and then do his job and then walk all the way back to Woolton to go to school. And my mum, she was 8, and they lived in the cottages, the Lane cottages, which is the bottom of Greensbridge Road. They lived there, and she used to have to go to Rawlingson Farm of a morning to lay the fires and help dress the children. There were 3 children, and she'd do that, and then she'd go back to school. And then again in the evening she'd come back to see to the children and do other various jobs in the house at the age of 8. And my mum and dad met on Rawlinson's farm when, many moons after they were a lot older then when my dad was working on the farm.
They carried on working on the farm?
They carried on, yeah, they carried on working on the farm. And my dad used to do the ploughing. I remember him doing the ploughing with the horses and the plough at the back of the horse. I used to watch him, but he used to keep the furrows quite straight. He used to do all that. But here he is on the farms. That's him with there was only, see, that's the barn, that's the one I was thinking of. That's all the farm workers. That's the farm workers.
No way.
And most of them are my relatives. They're my uncles.
And what's the top one? Is that your dad then?
That's my dad, yeah.
Well, that's a hell of a wheelbarrow, that, isn't
Yeah,
it? That's,
yeah. I think that was the only jobs, I suppose, when he left school. He just came right to Halewood and worked on a farm. Grew up on the farms. And the cottages, they were the farmers, Rollinson's farm cottages. And if you worked on the farm, you got one of the cottages, which my granddad did, because my granddad also worked on the farm. And my granddad's spare time was going into Garton's Wood to fish. I used to go with my mum with a can and sandwiches, the old cans, with his tea in, and take him while he was fishing round the pond. We'd go and have a walk around Garton's Wood. My dad used to go in Garton's Wood to collect firewood, because there was no money then. no money. And another thing I remember, my dad used to bring home a can of milk from the cow, but the farmer charged him for it. He never got it free. He had to pay for it out of his wages. There's my Uncle Bill, my Uncle Jack, who else was there all on there? My Uncle Jim, yeah. They're all my uncles. I think all worked on the farm.
Because in those days,
Yeah.
if you lived in Harewood,
You worked on the farms.
you worked on
That's
the farm because
that was him as a young man. With my uncle. With my Uncle Jack. Yeah. Oh, all the farms have gone. This where we're sitting now was a pea field which belonged to Rawlingson's farm, and my mum used to pick the peas. I did have great big baskets, and my mum used to sit me in the basket while she picked the peas. I think I ate more than she picked, actually. I must have been about 4 or 5, I think, then, and she'd sit me in this big basket, which seemed a big basket, probably wasn't as big as I can remember. But yeah, the pig fields. So this used to be the pea field. Light Oaks Drive, up there, that was all fields. That was Gracie's fields. This side was Rawlingson's fields. And then further up was Shack Lady's fields. And Garton's farm. Tarbuck Way, they've still got those fields. But here in Harewood, all those fields have gone. This is a map here of Harewood, 1958. My dad was really hard working. You know, it was hard labour. There was no modern machinery or things for them to do, like ploughing the fields, and everything was a spade, or, you know, there was no machinery what they have for today to do the fields with. But no, he worked hard. Yeah, oh gosh, yes, everyone mucked in. There was nobody. I think most people that were around here then worked on the farms. Don't think there was many people that did other jobs. Well, I can't remember. To me, everybody worked on the farm, as I remember.
oh yes,
It was like a parade through the village, a parade through the old village. Yeah.
yes.
What was that called, sorry?
This is the old Rose Queen. I was in the Rose Queen every year. I started off as a rose peddler and worked myself right to the very back. There I am. There I am. There I am there. I'm there. That's me right on the end with my cousin. I mean, lots of people wouldn't know there's been farms here. Where all these new houses are, they wouldn't realise that was a working farm at some point, which is quite sad. That's somebody at the door.
I'm Tom Harrison, and I have lived on this farm for nearly 77 years.
And I'm Olive Harrison, Tom's wife. We've been married for coming up 53 years. So I, not from a farming family, but I knew about country life, and we met through Young Farmers Club. Now this is our oilseed rape store, which we store the oilseed rape for other people as well as ourselves. And it's, well, obviously it's empty now, but the first year it was full, totally full, so much so we had to barricade the door.
The family has farmed in Tarbuck for about 175 years. I can remember when I was a child, we still had horses, and I can remember, well, the last field I remember getting ploughed was down at Yew Tree. I can remember that getting ploughed with horses. I can remember just about when I was 3 or 4 riding on a horse when they were loading sheaves of corn on it. At the same age, sitting on a tractor allegedly steering it when they were loading it, because there was no restrictions in them days. But when I was 9 years old, there came a law in that you couldn't drive a tractor till you were 13. So I had to stop driving for 4 years.
I bet you didn't. We got married, I left work to move here and didn't go back to work because I worked on the farm planting potatoes, because everything was hand done then, planting the potatoes, and when the potatoes were digging, you were on the potato harvester and sorting the potatoes, and we'd sell produce at the door, didn't we?
Yeah.
Cabbages and collies and eggs. So I filled in the old traditional role of a farmer's wife. Nowadays, that's different. Nowadays, every farmer's wife has their own career, and because there's not the staff needed anymore, is there?
No. Well, we did have pigs and poultry at the other. Well, we had a little bit of poultry at this farm, but mainly at the other farm we had pigs and poultry, and pigs were just used to rear them. They did originally go down to Birmingham to Fat Stock Marketing Corporation, but then they started going to a local slaughterhouse. We originally always grew potatoes. They, in them days, all went to a firm named Waterworths in Liverpool.
Yes.
Who had a shop in every shopping parade in Liverpool. In the late 50s, we started growing peas for Bird's Eye when they had a factory at Kirby. They used to load them on tractors and trailers and take them to a farm in Halewood where there was a viner which you took the whole plant to, and it went through, and they were all shelled and everything, and carted from Halewood to Kirby. Bird's Eye originally started with peas, then we started growing sprouts for them, and they just went in on the stalk to Kirby, and I think then they were just hand-picked off the stalks at Kirby, and then we also grew broad beans for them for 3 or 4 years, and they were picked and went in to Kirby in the pods. The demand went then, so we started selling direct to retailers then, and then the retailers, the small greengrocers, all went downhill on the back of the supermarkets coming in. This is a seed drill as well, but this one has what they call a leading tine on it, which goes a bit deeper, and then the one behind it sows the seed. It's allegedly good land for cereals.
Right.
Can stand drought and everything, but the drought we're having now, we're experiencing the worst growing conditions I've ever seen. We'll have low crops, and I've heard reports earlier this morning that wheat is coming to here in some parts of the country, which is 3 weeks earlier than normal because of the drought stress. Farmers are very adaptable
Yeah.
to meet the challenges. If something is on the horizon where you can make money out of it, you do it.
We've had some really tough times, especially younger, haven't we, when we've been digging potatoes and it's been absolutely over your wellies with mud, and it's a lovely way of life.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have swap it for the world, would
No.
we? But it's not all been roses, and there's no money in it.
Years ago, the government used to give you a guaranteed price. Now there's none of that. People say, oh, farmers are getting subsidies and making a fortune. The whole reason for subsidies was for cheap food for the general public. It wasn't to help the farmers, it was to help the rest of the community to have cheap food. But that is never appreciated and never realised
No.
by the general public of how the system works.
Yeah.
Farms are asset rich and cash poor.
Yeah.
Your return on money invested,
And
if you
yeah.
looked at it, you'd think you're stupid.
You're not seen him out with his water diviner yet, are you? That's his party trick. isn't it?
Yeah. It's really cheating because I know which way the drain goes.
There you go. It just automatically does it.
Does it actually work?
It does work. It does actually work. Yeah. Anybody, you'd be able to do it. Anybody can do it.
Really?
You just walk across, and when it crosses water, it goes,
And what is
and it
that?
actually does work. Oh yes.
Oh my God,
You're
look
going
at
too
that.
fast, I think.
No, it did it.
It did it, yeah, it did it.
Yields between the 50s, should I say late 70s, so well 80s, they probably quadrupled.
Yeah.
But over the last 20 years, the improvement is only marginal
Yeah.
compared with what it was then. Food security is not taken seriously enough in this country, I don't think.
I say farmers are born to it, and
Yeah,
that's all they've ever done and known.
Farmer is only the custodian for his generation.
Yeah.
What a great quote.
This house here is the centre of Cronton, that's the main crossroads. That's Stock's Cottage, which used to be my granddad's house and then my uncle's. Here we have the driveway, comes up the back. This part here was where the warehouse is. So this is one of my father inspecting a load of potatoes, which he used to have to do when they were delivered to make sure there was no disease in them, no rot. It's a load of potatoes all handballed on, as they called it, not on pallets. I'm Paul and I live in Prescott, but my grandfather used to have a small holding in Cronton, which was in Knowsley, and the family have grown stuff and sold stuff since the 1920s, and more significantly since 1940 odd. He used to peel them, inspect them, and then we'd back the lorry into one of those bays and unload it by hand. That's a company called RS Cockerells of York, which they supply walkers with potatoes for the crisps now. They no longer supply wholesale potato merchants. We grew cabbage, lettuce, and we wholesaled to various local shops, many of which have unfortunately disappeared over the years. But yeah, it was a considerable business. There's our old warehouse in Cronton. My father's, there's the bays that used to have the lorries in, and inside there's stacking potatoes. That's my father next to a wagon load of potatoes. Same wagon, that's my father looking out of his office on his last day in work when he was retiring. All that land now is houses. This part here with the house on the top, that was part of our field, up onto the top, across here, and then down here. And these houses were, this piece of the land was owned by Greenall Whitley, who have the pub here, the Unicorn. My grandfather, after the war, he lived on a farm, and he decided that he wanted to own somewhere as opposed to rent somewhere. So he found a plot of land in Cronton behind the pub. There's about 2 acres, and he bought that and built a warehouse there and grew stuff and wholesale stuff. My grandfather actually had one of the first lorries in the area. He bought an REO Speedwagon, which people think is just a pop group from the past, but it was actually a very early wagon, and people used to come out on the streets in Huyton and watch him driving it to Liverpool Market, loaded up with his produce. Yeah, locally grown stuff, and then over the years, with potato side of the business became more important than the fruit and veg side, and we used to buy potatoes from all over the country, and occasionally from France, which was quite a feat. In 1976 we bought a lot of produce from wherever we could, because that was the drought year, and potatoes were very expensive and very sought after. So yeah, we bought from all over eventually, and the business grew into just a potato wholesale business. And further down the road, if you go down, on the left in here, there used to be tomato greenhouses where we used to buy tomatoes from. Further down the road, as Fox's Bank Lane, but as you come down here, all this farm on the left, all this land, this is now a sandstone quarry. Didn't used to be, it used to be fields. And this farm here, I think that's the one, was owned by Bennett's. Walter Bennett and the son John and Ian used to farm there. Big potato producers back in the day. They have another farm in Halewood and a farm in Rainhill. This was bought off them for sandstone, or for clay, to make bricks. So back in the day, some of the school holidays evolved to pick potatoes, for instance. They would have a week off, and kids used to not be in school, they'd go down to the farm and help the farmer pick the potatoes, and that's how some of the school holidays evolved over the years. It was more of a community thing. People knew what fresh produce was and what you could do with it, how you cooked it, and were grateful for it. I think the more modern family now tends to buy from a supermarket where stuff is almost, very often it's all ready made into a meal for you. But the connection between the fresh product of, say, a potato and a jacket potato and chips and mashed potato, that has been lost now. A lot of children don't identify the raw product as what they're actually eating from the supermarket, which is a shame. That's a loss. That'll be 14 ton of potatoes on the back there. All no pallets underneath, all hand lifted on when they started in York, and then we used to hand lift them off into the warehouse, and then later when they hand lift them onto our own wagons to deliver around the fish and chip shop. There were no forklifts in those days. It was hard, back-breaking work, but you could get people to do it, whereas I doubt very much you'd get someone to do that now. So we used to farm across here up to the top. They then wanted to take that back to extend the pub car park and to build the houses here. So where our old unit was in Cronton behind the Unicorn pub is all houses now. And that's the case with a lot of land and a lot of small producers. It's very difficult to make money growing small amounts of veg. You're not big enough for supermarkets, and your outlet of this small corner shop has gone. So people tend to try and apply for planning permission and build, and as a consequence, the landscape where we were, when I lived in Rainhill, for instance, most of the land at the end of our road, there was a dairy. He had his own cows and pigs and hens, and I used to go and collect eggs with him, and that's all houses. Now it's behind where Rainhill Library was. There were mostly fields. Cronton, where our business was, across the road was Halton, and then Halton started building, and it was coming closer and closer to Knowsley. And that's, unfortunately, is the way things are going. Unless you can make money, a living, and believe me, farmers don't always make the sort of money people think they make. It's a very, very difficult job. It's a 7-day a week, 52 weeks of the year job. And eventually, builders come in and offer the right money. Fields change hands and they become houses. That's another sad progression, but inevitable, I suppose. Yeah, this is my granddad's handwriting from 1947, this one, in fact, 1947. My granddad was very, very traditional, very traditional. So he was in the First World War in the Navy, and when he came out, he expected all his staff to behave almost in military precision. We never, ever got home early. We worked, and at 3 o'clock, if we'd finished and we asked could we go, there was never a chance. You could brush the yard, and when you finished brushing, you could brush it again. So he was very, very traditional, strict man, and he would be gobsmacked to see the way people eat now, the leisure that's about now, really, because he wasn't a big one for leisure, really, and I think a lot of people of his generation, leisure was a luxury that they weren't interested in very often, or they certainly hadn't got time for it. They were too busy working. My granddad always wore a suit for work. I never saw my granddad without a suit on, shirt and tie. But there weren't the casual clothes then, and that was his generation. That was the respectful, that was the way he dressed. Now, jeans and t-shirt. My granddad thought jeans were disgraceful when I started wearing jeans and had my hair long. he thought I was really disrespectful and I would come to nothing in life, you know. I was a waste of space.
Has he told you that?
Yeah, he used to say, oh, I can't remember the phrase he used actually, no good will become of him, or along those lines. He just thought it showed a lack of respect wearing denim and not having your hair cut to military measures. But that's, you know, different generation. So this is the ledger for sales. The customer name at the top, 10 hundredweight potatoes, 10 shillings per hundredweight. That's 50 pence a hundredweight, which is incredibly priced. It was 1948 though. Back in the day when I first started working and we used to grow cabbage, beetroot, you don't realise the work that used to go into that, the rotivating the land up, drilling it up, laying the seed in, thinning the seed out. That used to be a thing we'd wait because you grow a continuous line of seed, but then you'd have to go down and produce the gaps for the cabbage, for instance. So there'd be a line of cabbage seeds. You'd go and you'd go with the hoe and you'd get some out and then you'd pick the best one and you'd leave the rest. They needed constant care. They needed constant weeding, spraying. For caterpillars were a big problem. They destroy a crop if you've got caterpillars. So the first phase, it was an ongoing task. It was back-breaking work, and we used to get buttons for the produce. Farming historically, as always, because of the weather and climate, you produce on a bad year, you have a bad crop, but you get more money for your crop. On a good year, when you've got a fantastic crop and you're so proud of it, everybody's got it, and so you don't get much for it. And that is one of the big disappointments of farming. Farmers want to produce nice food, they want people to appreciate it, but they also need a profit from it. Not a fortune, but they need to make a profit. And it's a soul-destroying job when you're selling stuff at less than it costs you to produce it, which happens a lot more regularly than people understand. Overdrafts are very, very common amongst farmers, and they just live from year to year, and the bank lives on the fact that they have an ownership of their land, whether the farmer knows it or not, due to their overdraft. And they just go on, they keep on producing and hope that next year will be better. And that's what keeps farming going, really. Turner's Asbestos Cement, which used to be a big factory in Widnes, producing, as it says, asbestos cement. And there's their orders, you know, bag of Swedes, 11 shillings, bags of carrots, 6 and 6. I'm not sure what 6 9D for a box of apples, £50 of apples, 9D, which would be 4 pence.
And since that's for the canteen, that'd be delivered.
That's for the canteen,
and
yeah.
they'd be cooking that on site as well, obviously. Then.
Yeah, we used to deliver. When I started, we used to deliver to Albright and Wilson's, which is a big chemical company in Widnes. They used to have big canteens, all workers. A lot of factories then, different employment situations. People worked in factories, and bigger places all had canteens where everybody ate, and it was subsidised very often as part of their salaries.
And cooked as well, not like bought.
No, it was cooked. There was a kitchen full of staff. Everything was prepared fresh every day, made into pies and stew or whatever. But yeah, it was all delivered in its raw product and turned into a meal by the staff there. Basic food is so easy to cook, and basic vegetable is incredibly easy to buy and to prepare. But most people either don't know how to, or they haven't got the time anymore, or they certainly, in the time they have, they don't want to spend it cooking. They'd rather be watching TV or going out or whatever they do. People do different things. When in my granddad's generation, generally husbands worked, wives at home looked after the kids, took to school, and they spent their day cooking and cleaning. Is that a good thing that's died out? No, it's a good thing in a way that people aren't enslaved. But the fresh food has suffered as a result of the extra leisure time that people have now, and the extra demands on their time. They don't want to spend it cooking. That's just the way it is. People don't, city people a lot of time don't go out into the countryside, and they don't go for walks. and they don't see sheep in the field, and they don't see crops, and certainly they wouldn't recognise a particular crop in the field, where I would recognise most crops in the field just by the leaf on the top. I would know whether it was potatoes, carrots, or what veg it was. That's not, that's not a common thing to know now, really. People just see fields of stuff growing and don't necessarily make the connection between that and the food on their plate. So that's James Allman's farm, who grows a lot of produce. Still sends it from his farmyard. But I've known James and his family, his father, such for a couple of generations. Smashing lad, really hard working farmer, like we all are.
Well, my name's James Almond. You're at Cronton Farm, which is in Cronton. We're on the main road through the village, not far from the M62. And we've been here for about 200 years. We don't have enormous quantities of any one thing because we're trying to supply the farm shop. And we've got a regular clientele that come in for what we've got. So the amount we grow reflects how much we can sell. My great-great-great-grandfather came here in 1834. Previously he'd been farming at Windle, which is the other side of St Helens. He set roots down here in October 1834, so we've been here ever since. But I think I'm the 5th or the 6th generation. These are last year's winter cauliflower, which we're still cutting at the moment. Predominantly, quite a lot of the land was woodland, which was cleared in subsequent years. There would have been growing probably about 60% of the farm would have been grass. They'd have been producing beef and milk, which would have been the major crop. They'd have been producing potatoes and some vegetables. This would be my grandfather on a combine, probably in the early 1950s. This was taken about 1950s with a baler that they had at the time. That's my grandfather on the combine again, probably about the 1950s. This one's a picture of my father as a little lad and his sister in the stackyard. At that time the farm was 73 acres and there were probably 5 or 6 horses on the farm, and they would range from being a couple of trap ponies to some heavy horses as well to do the actual work. You wouldn't have had any more horses than you had men to drive them. In the 1905 census, I think, there were my grandparents, the niece from Windle, 4 children on the farm. There were a couple of employees. As well as that, when it was needed, there would have been casual labour, seasonal work come in for harvesting potatoes, cutting corn, stooking corn, thrashing corn, making hay. The staffing levels back 100 years ago were a lot higher than they are now. On a small, there's only 2 of us now on 150 acres, whereas perhaps 100 years ago there'd have been any time maybe a dozen or 15 people working on the farm to get harvesting. That's my father, the same chap as that one there, the tall lad with the glasses, and that's me. And we were digging potatoes on the field where we've just been. This is where the parsnips are. That must have been taken, I don't know, 74, 73, 74, something like that. Well, up until the early 1970s, I would say, it was a big thing in October that farmers would go into the local towns and villages like Whiston and Cronton and Prescott with a tractor and trailer, and there'd be families waiting to get on the trailer with the kids, and they'd come and pick spuds for the day. It's a thing that disappeared in the 70s because we're mechanised, and we still have customers that remember coming here as kids 50, 60 years ago picking spuds. Years ago I was talking to my father about potatoes, like you do, and I asked him what kind of potatoes they were eating, first earlies they were eating when he was a child, when he was younger, and he said they were called 90-fold. Well, I tried to get some seed and they're unobtainable, they're unavailable. But I found out that there's a laboratory in Scotland called SASA, which I think is Scientific Advice for Scottish Agriculture. And they keep them as in vitro material, which is in a test tube. And I obtained some. And in a little test tube, that's a Nikita test tube. But in the test tube came 6 tiny little plants. And from the tiny little plants, I propagated them on, taking cuttings and growing them on. I obtained them basically because my father was very ill, and I thought, well, it'd be nice to get him something to eat. So we are growing what basically is a heritage variety of potato here for our customers as a first early potato. As a variety, it's like 130 years old. Plant breeders have developed varieties of cauliflower and cabbage which are very, very different to what they were 150, 200 years ago. Even varieties of potatoes, they're not the same. So everything in here now is the start of my seed programme. The idea of a new potato, as it was something that was very small, very fresh, and you rubbed it under the tap and the skin washed away, and you put them in there and you boiled them and they were beautiful. Well, it's sad really, because when people get new potatoes, proper new potatoes, they really enjoy them. But the supply chain that we had has disappeared. It's been taken over by the supermarket. The supermarket cannot supply a product that's been dug that morning and put on the shelves for somebody to use that dinner time. About the only supermarket that does do something like that is Booths, and credit to them as well. There's a complete disconnect between people's attitudes or knowledge of what's going on in the countryside and the way that they view it. Now, if you look down there, the green field with the brown patches in is a field of SFI grass, or rather it's a herbal ley that we've grown to feed the livestock with. But because it's been so dry, there's about 60% of it hasn't come. It's still not emerged, and it might not emerge because it's been so dry, so that might need re-sowing. And that would have been winter forage for the cattle, and then in 2 years' time people would have been eating it as beef or milk or lamb. We grow potatoes. About 20% of the crop is sold over the farm gate, and customers come and buy potatoes off us. About 25%, 30% of the vegetables we produce go over the farm gate. The rest of the vegetables and the potatoes go to local merchants. So we supply Hurst Brothers in Liverpool with the brassica crop, the cabbage, the cauliflower, the swede, the parsnip, that kind of thing. The potatoes we supply a chap called Anthony Swift, and most of them going to chip shops in the area. The beef, we sell beef ourselves over the farm gate. We put about a quarter of the beef direct to customers, and the lamb. The turkeys we sell entirely ourselves at Christmas to customers. And then the cereals, at the moment we're feeding them all to the cattle. Profitability, or the ability to make your money back growing wheat, has disappeared, so we've been backed into a corner, and the wheat ground now is SFI, Sustainable Farming Incentive. So instead of growing something for people to eat, we're growing bird food. That's a small patch of parsnips that by now should be 6 or 7 inches tall, and there's nothing come. But good food isn't expensive. For you to go and buy eggs and potatoes and some meat, it doesn't have to be expensive meat, minced beef, or whatever it is, you can feed a family for a lot less cooking the meals at home yourself. I can't comment on the energy prices, but for the actual cost of the commodity that you're eating, it'll be a lot less money than living at McDonald's every day, or buying burgers, having it delivered to your house. A lot less. And then this is where we sell our produce from. Now obviously it's Monday morning, so we've had a busy weekend, but majority of veg that we cut it fresh for people as they come. I worry for my children. My son works with us on the farm, and it's just knowing what the future's going to be for him, because with the uncertainty of APR now, what's been a steady asset to the family and to the local community, it's been here for 200 years, is likely to be broken up with a loss of APR.
And what's APR, sorry?
It's agricultural property relief.
And so people know this is inheritance tax.
That's right, yeah. So it'll break up what was a stable local asset to everybody. We fed people use the land for recreation, we've got footpaths, and it potentially could go.
So why do you keep doing it then?
Well, because I'm stupid. I don't know, I like it. It's the only thing I've ever done. I think it would be disrespectful to my father and my grandparents and my uncle and all the other members of the family who've killed themselves keeping the farm up just to let it disappear. I don't know, there's a respect out to them really, I suppose, most of it. And the other thing is, why should I give it up? Too old to go and do anything else now. I'm not going to get a job, do something else now, are we? Might do.